A millionaire watched 129 experts fail to find the flaw in the 600-etan metal system, until a poor 7-year-old girl stood up and said something that silenced everyone in the room. But what did she reveal? Before we reveal this poignant story of loneliness and pain, let us know where you're watching from and subscribe for more heartfelt tales. The massive 75-inch screen dominated the executive conference room on the 42nd floor of Sterling Technologies, casting an eerie blue glow across the faces of 129 of America's most brilliant software engineers. Error messages cascaded down the display like digital rain, each line representing another failure in the company's most ambitious project yet, a revolutionary artificial intelligence system worth $689 million. Robert Sterling, the 62-year-old tech mogul whose silver hair had grown noticeably thinner over the past 6 months, stood at the head of the mahogany table, his knuckles white as he gripped the back of his leather chair. Dark circles under his steel-grey eyes told the story of countless sleepless nights spent watching his empire's crown jewel crumble before his very eyes. "Gentlemen," his voice cut through the tension like a blade, "we've been at this for 18 months. 18 months of the brightest minds in Silicon Valley, staring at the same code, running the same diagnostics, applying every algorithm known to mankind." He paused, his jaw clenched tight. "And we're no closer to solving this nightmare than we were on day one." Dr. Marcus Webb, the lead systems architect with 27 years of experience at MIT and Stanford, adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses nervously. "Mr. Sterling, I assure you, we've examined every single line of code. The logic appears sound, the syntax is clean, but something fundamental is causing these cascade failures in the neural network pathways." "Fundamental?" Sterling's voice rose sharply. "This system was supposed to revolutionize medical diagnostics, Marcus. Hospitals across the country are waiting. The FDA approval process is stalled because we can't deliver a working product. Do you understand what's at stake here?" The room fell silent, except for the soft humming of servers and the occasional beep from the monitoring systems. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the bustling city of San Francisco spread out below, oblivious to the crisis unfolding in the glass tower above. Sarah Chen, the youngest engineer on the team at 28, cleared her throat hesitantly. "Sir, perhaps we should consider starting fresh, rebuilding the core architecture from—" "Absolutely not!" Sterling slammed his hand on the table, making several coffee cups jump. "We don't have time for that luxury, Sarah. Our competitors are breathing down our necks. Meridian Corp is weeks away from launching their own AI system. If we don't solve this now, Sterling Technologies becomes irrelevant overnight." The weight of his words hung heavy in the air. Every person in that room knew their careers, their families' futures, depended on cracking this impossible puzzle. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. They had created the most sophisticated artificial intelligence system ever conceived, yet they couldn't understand why their own creation refused to function properly. Dr. Patricia Ramos, the senior data scientist who had been with the company for 15 years, spoke up quietly. "Robert, maybe we need fresh perspective. Sometimes when you're too close to a problem." "Fresh perspective?" Sterling's laugh was bitter. "Patricia, we've brought in consultants from Harvard, Stanford, MIT. We've had teams from Google and Microsoft examine our code under strict NDAs. Every expert we've consulted says the same thing. Theoretically, this should work perfectly." He turned back to the screen, where new error messages continued to scroll endlessly. "But theory doesn't pay the bills, does it? Theory doesn't justify the $689 million we've invested. Theory doesn't explain to our shareholders why we're hemorrhaging money while our competitors surge ahead." The morning sun climbed higher outside the windows, casting long shadows across the conference table. In exactly 4 hours, Sterling would have to face the board of directors and explain why the company's most ambitious project remained broken. The thought made his stomach churn with a familiar mixture of dread and determination. As if reading his mind, his assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "Mr. Sterling, the board meeting has been moved up to 2 o'clock. They want preliminary reports on Project Genesis before the quarterly review." Sterling closed his eyes briefly, feeling every one of his 62 years weighing on his shoulders. When he opened them again, his gaze swept across the room, full of brilliant minds who had given everything to solve this puzzle. "All right, people. We have exactly 3 hours and 47 minutes before I have to walk into that boardroom. 3 hours to find what 129 of the world's best engineers have missed for 18 months. 3 hours to save not just this project, but this company." The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the relentless cascade of error messages on the giant screen, a digital countdown to disaster. The elevator descended silently to the building's ground floor, carrying Robert Sterling away from the chaos of the 42nd floor toward an appointment he had been dreading for weeks. Dr. Elizabeth Morgan's psychology practice occupied a modest suite in the medical district, a stark contrast to the gleaming corporate towers where Sterling usually conducted his business. At 54, Dr. Morgan had dedicated her career to helping high achievers cope with stress, but she had never encountered a case quite like Sterling's. When he had first walked into her office 3 months ago, she immediately recognized the signs of a man carrying impossible weight on his shoulders. "Robert, you look exhausted," she observed, as he settled into the familiar leather chair across from her desk. The afternoon sunlight streaming through her office windows highlighted the deep lines that had appeared around his eyes since their first session. $689 million, Elizabeth, he said without preamble. "That's what keeps me awake at night, not the number itself, but what it represents. Every pension fund that invested in us, every employee whose future depends on this project succeeding, every medical facility that's counting on our AI to save lives." Dr. Morgan made a note on her pad. "When was the last time you slept more than 4 hours consecutively?" Sterling's laugh was hollow. "Sleep is a luxury I can't afford right now. My team is brilliant, absolutely brilliant, but we're missing something fundamental. It's like having all the pieces of a puzzle, but not seeing the picture they're supposed to form. Tell me about your team. How are they handling the pressure? They're exhausted, frustrated, some are starting to doubt themselves. Marcus Webb has been with me for 12 years, and yesterday I saw him questioning algorithms he could write in his sleep. Sarah Chen, one of our youngest engineers, suggested we scrap everything and start over." He ran his hands through his silver hair. "Maybe she's right. Maybe we're too invested in this approach to see clearly." Dr. Morgan leaned forward slightly. "Robert, in our previous sessions, you've mentioned that your greatest innovations came from unexpected sources. The breakthrough that launched Sterling Technologies 23 years ago. Remind me how that happened." Sterling's expression softened slightly as he recalled the memory. "I was stuck on a networking protocol problem, spent months on it with my original team. Then one day I was having lunch at a small cafe near campus, and I overheard a conversation between 2 kids talking about passing notes in class without the teacher noticing. Their simple description of the system they used gave me the insight I needed. And that led to your first major patent? The foundation of everything we built afterward," he confirmed. "But this is different, Elizabeth. That was 23 years ago when I was 39 years old and had nothing to lose. Now I have thousands of employees, shareholders, a reputation built over decades. The stakes couldn't be higher." Dr. Morgan set down her pen and studied Sterling carefully. "What if the solution isn't about working harder or bringing in more experts? What if it's about changing your perspective entirely?" "What do you mean?" "You've told me that you've consulted every major university, every tech company, every expert in the field. But have you considered that maybe the solution lies outside traditional expertise?" Sterling frowned. "I don't understand. Who else would we consult? We need people who understand advanced neural networks, machine learning architecture, quantum computing principles." "Perhaps, Doctor." Morgan said gently, but sometimes the most complex problems have surprisingly simple solutions that experts overlook precisely because of their expertise. They're trained to see complexity, to search for sophisticated answers. The session continued for another 30 minutes, but Sterling found his mind wandering to Dr. Morgan's words about perspective. As he rode the elevator back up to the 42nd floor, he couldn't shake the feeling that she might be onto something, though he couldn't quite grasp what. When the elevator doors opened, he was greeted by the familiar sight of his exhausted team still huddled around their workstations, the giant screen still displaying its endless stream of error messages, the sight that had become both familiar and heartbreaking over the past 18 months. "Any progress?" he asked Marcus, though the dejected looks around the room already provided the answer. "We've run 17 different diagnostic protocols since you left," Marcus replied wearily. "Same results every time. The system initializes perfectly. All components check out individually. But the moment we attempt full integration—" He gestured helplessly at the screen. Sterling stood there for a long moment, Dr. Morgan's words echoing in his mind. "Change your perspective. Look outside traditional expertise. Sometimes the most complex problems have surprisingly simple solutions." But with less than 2 hours remaining before the board meeting and $689 million hanging in the balance, taking an unconventional approach felt like the riskiest gamble of his entire career. The Sterling Technologies Community Outreach Program had been Robert's late wife's idea, implemented 7 years after Margaret's passing from cancer as a way to honor her memory. Every month, local schools brought groups of children to tour the facility, inspiring young minds to pursue careers in science and technology. Today's group came from Lincoln Elementary, a school in one of San Francisco's most underprivileged neighborhoods. 28 third graders, their ages ranging from 8 to 9 years old, filed into the demonstration room on the 15th floor with wide-eyed wonder. Their teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, had prepared them for weeks about this special field trip to see real computers and technology. Among the children was Emma Rodriguez, no relation to the teacher, a petite 9-year-old girl with thick-rimmed glasses held together with tape and bright, curious eyes that seemed to absorb everything around her. Her worn sneakers squeaked slightly on the polished floors, and her backpack, clearly hand-me-down, bore the faded logo of a cartoon character from several years past. Emma lived with her grandmother in a small apartment above a corner market. Her parents had died in a car accident when she was 6, leaving her in the care of Rosa Rodriguez, a 67-year-old woman who worked 2 jobs to make ends meet. Despite their financial struggles, Rosa had noticed Emma's unusual gift with patterns and numbers, encouraging her granddaughter's curiosity even when they couldn't afford educational toys or books. "Welcome to Sterling Technologies, young scientists," denounced Jennifer Walsh, the company's community relations coordinator, her enthusiasm genuine despite the stress she knew was building on the upper floors. "Today you'll see how we use computers to solve big problems and help people." The children oohed and ahed as Jennifer demonstrated various technologies, but Emma found herself drawn to something else entirely. Through the glass partition that separated the demonstration room from the main floor, she could see multiple monitors displaying scrolling text and flashing warnings. "Mrs. Walsh." Emma raised her hand, her voice soft but clear. "What are those red numbers doing?" Jennifer followed Emma's gaze, and her smile faltered slightly. Those monitors were connected to Project Genesis, displaying the same error cascades that had been tormenting the engineering team for 18 months. "Oh, those are just system diagnostics. Very complicated computer stuff." But Emma wasn't satisfied with that answer. During the break, while her classmates crowded around the 3D printer demonstration, she slipped closer to the glass partition, pressing her nose against it to get a better view of the scrolling displays. What Emma saw was pattern, beautiful, complex, but somehow familiar pattern. Growing up with limited resources, she had developed an extraordinary ability to find patterns in everything around her. She could predict which bus would arrive first, based on traffic patterns she observed from her grandmother's apartment window. She could tell when the corner market was about to run out of milk based on delivery schedules she had memorized. She could solve jigsaw puzzles faster than adults by recognizing how pieces fit together in ways that weren't obvious at first glance. And now, looking at those cascading error messages, she saw something that made her heart race with excitement. "Emma," Mrs. Rodriguez called, "come back to the group, sweetie." But Emma couldn't move. She was transfixed by what she was seeing on those monitors. The pattern was so clear to her, so obvious. She couldn't understand why no one else seemed to notice it. The numbers weren't random. They weren't even really errors in the traditional sense. They were following a sequence, a rhythm that repeated every 47 lines, with variations that occurred in predictable intervals. It reminded her of the puzzle books her grandmother bought her at the dollar store, the ones where you had to find the hidden picture by connecting dots that seemed unrelated at first. "Excuse me," Emma whispered to a passing employee, tugging gently on the woman's sleeve. The woman turned around and smiled down at Emma. It was Sarah Chen, taking a brief break from the nightmare upstairs. "Hi there, are you enjoying your tour? Those numbers up there," Emma pointed at the monitors, "they're not really broken, are they?" Sarah's expression grew puzzled. "What do you mean, honey?" "They're following a pattern. Like when my grandmother's radio gets staticky because the neighbor's microwave is running. It looks broken, but it's actually just getting mixed up with something else." Sarah knelt down to Emma's eye level, intrigued despite her exhaustion. "What kind of pattern do you see?" Emma pushed her taped glasses up her nose and pointed at the screen. "See how every 47th line has the same ending numbers, and every time it gets to that point, it starts over but shifted by 3 positions. It's like a song that's playing too fast, so all the notes are getting jumbled together." For a moment, Sarah felt her breath catch in her throat. In all their months of analysis, no one had looked for recurring intervals in the error sequences. They had been focused on the errors themselves, not the pattern of how they appeared. "Emma," Sarah said carefully, "what would you do to fix a song that was playing too fast?" Emma smiled, the first time she had felt truly confident all day. "Easy. You'd slow it down to the right speed, or you'd find the right timing so all the parts match up again." As those words left Emma's lips, Sarah felt something click in her mind, a possibility so elegantly simple that a team of brilliant engineers had missed it entirely while searching for complex solutions. Sarah Chen's hands trembled slightly as she rode the elevator back to the 42nd floor, Emma's innocent observation echoing in her mind. It's like a song that's playing too fast, so all the notes are getting jumbled together. Could it really be that simple? Could 18 months of failure come down to a timing synchronization issue that a 9-year-old girl had spotted in minutes? The elevator doors opened to reveal the familiar scene of controlled chaos. Engineers hunched over workstations, whiteboards covered with complex equations, and the giant screen still cascading its endless stream of error messages. Robert Sterling stood near the windows, speaking in hushed tones on his phone, likely updating the board about their lack of progress. "Marcus!" Sarah called out, her voice carrying an urgency that made several heads turn. "I need you to run a timing analysis on the error sequences. Look for recurring intervals, specifically every 47 iterations." Dr. Marcus Webb looked up from his monitor, confusion evident in his tired eyes. "Timing analysis? Sarah, we've run every diagnostic protocol known to—" "Just humor me, please," Sarah interrupted, moving quickly to her workstation. "Check for synchronization drift in the neural network polling cycles." As Marcus began typing commands, other engineers gradually gathered around, drawn by the unusual energy in Sarah's voice. This was the first new approach anyone had suggested in weeks that wasn't simply a variation of something they had already tried. "That's interesting," Marcus said after several minutes of analysis. There is a recurring pattern every 47 error cycles, with a drift variance of approximately 3.2 milliseconds each iteration. Drift variance? Robert Sterling had ended his phone call and approached the group. "What are you looking at?" Sarah's fingers flew across her keyboard, pulling up timing charts and synchronization logs that hadn't been examined in months. "Mr. Sterling, what if our problem isn't with the neural network architecture itself, but with the timing synchronization between the different processing layers?" "Explain," Sterling said curtly, though his voice carried a hint of hope he was afraid to acknowledge. "The AI system has 17 different neural networks processing in parallel, each one handling different aspects of data analysis. We designed them to communicate and share results in real time, but what if there's a timing mismatch? What if they're trying to share information at slightly different intervals, causing data collision and cascade failures?" Dr. Patricia Ramos, who had been listening from her workstation, suddenly stood up. "My God, Sarah, that would explain why the individual components test perfectly in isolation, but fail during integration. They're literally talking over each other." Sterling felt his pulse quicken. How could we have missed something like that? "Because we were focused on the complexity of the AI algorithms themselves," Marcus said, his voice growing excited as the implications became clear. "We assumed the problem was in the neural network logic, not in something as fundamental as basic timing synchronization." Sarah pulled up a visualization of the system's communication protocols on the main screen, replacing the error messages that had haunted them for so long. "Look at this timing chart. Network clusters 1 through 8 are operating on 47, 3-millisecond polling cycles, but clusters 9 through 17 are running on 47, 6-millisecond cycles. Over time, that tiny difference compounds into complete desynchronization. It's like an orchestra where the violins are playing in 4/4 time, but the cellos are playing in 4/4 time, just slightly faster," Patricia added. "Eventually, they're completely out of sync, and the music becomes chaos." Sterling stared at the timing chart, his mind racing. How long would it take to recalibrate the synchronization protocols? "If I'm right about this," Sarah said, her hands already moving to implement changes, "maybe an hour to adjust the polling cycles and run a test integration." "And if you're wrong?" Sarah met his gaze directly. "Then we've lost an hour, but we'll have eliminated another possibility and moved one step closer to the real solution." Sterling looked around the room at his team of exhausted engineers, then at the clock showing 53 minutes until his rescheduled board meeting. "Do it." As Sarah began implementing the synchronization adjustments, Sterling found himself thinking about the conversation with Dr. Morgan earlier that afternoon. Sometimes the most complex problems have surprisingly simple solutions that experts overlook precisely because of their expertise. He watched his team work with renewed energy, their movements more purposeful than they had been in weeks. For the first time in months, he allowed himself to feel a cautious optimism. Perhaps the answer had been hiding in plain sight all along, waiting for someone with fresh eyes to point it out. The irony wasn't lost on him that those fresh eyes belonged to a 9-year-old girl from an underprivileged school, someone who wouldn't have been in the building at all if not for his late wife's community outreach program. Margaret had always believed that wisdom could come from the most unexpected sources. "Synchronization protocols updated," Sarah announced. "Running initial integration test now." The room fell silent except for the soft humming of servers and the rapid clicking of keyboards. On the main screen, new data began to flow, and for the first time in 18 months, the cascade of error messages stopped. Instead, clean, organized data streams appeared, flowing smoothly between the neural network clusters like a perfectly choreographed dance. The silence in the conference room was deafening as the last error message disappeared from the massive screen, replaced by smooth, flowing data streams that pulsed in perfect synchronization. For 37 seconds, nobody moved, nobody breathed. The team of engineers who had battled this problem for 18 months stared in collective disbelief at what they were witnessing. Then chaos erupted. "It's working!" Dr. Patricia Ramos shouted, jumping from her chair. "The neural networks are communicating perfectly!" "Integration successful across all 17 clusters," Marcus called out, his voice cracking with emotion. "Zero error cascades, zero data collision warnings." Sarah Chen sat frozen at her workstation, tears streaming down her cheeks as she watched months of failure transform into beautiful, flowing success. The timing synchronization fix had worked beyond their wildest hopes. The AI system wasn't just functioning, it was performing exactly as designed, processing medical diagnostic data with unprecedented accuracy and speed. Robert Sterling stood motionless, his steel-grey eyes fixed on the screen, afraid to blink in case this moment turned out to be a dream. The weight of $689 million, thousands of jobs, and his entire legacy had been crushing him for so long that its sudden absence felt almost surreal. "Mr. Sterling," Sarah's voice was soft, hesitant. "Sir, we need to run comprehensive testing protocols, but the initial results show the system is operating at 112% of projected efficiency." Sterling turned slowly to face his team, these brilliant minds who had given everything to solve an impossible puzzle. "How long for full system validation?" "If we run continuous testing protocols," Marcus calculated quickly, "we could have complete validation within 6 hours, but preliminary results suggest we've actually exceeded our original performance specifications. The medical diagnostic accuracy rates are remarkable," Patricia added, pulling up test results. "We're seeing correctly identified conditions at rates 23% higher than our best projections. The AI is finding patterns in medical data that human doctors might miss." Sterling glanced at his watch. 28 minutes until the board meeting. For months, he had dreaded these meetings, knowing he would have to report another failure, another delay, another drain on company resources. Now, he found himself in the almost unbelievable position of reporting a success that exceeded even their most optimistic goals. "Sarah," he said, his voice steady but warm, "I want you to lead the presentation to the board in 25 minutes. "Me, sir?" Sarah's eyes widened. "But I'm not. Shouldn't you or Dr. Webb handle the board presentation? You solved the problem that 129 brilliant engineers couldn't crack. You saw what we all missed. You deserve to be the one who announces this breakthrough." As the team began preparing for the board presentation, Sterling stepped aside and pulled out his phone. He had a call to make to someone very important. "Jennifer Walsh, please," he said when the Community Relations Department answered. "This is Robert Sterling." "Mr. Sterling," Jennifer's voice carried surprise. "How can I help you?" "The elementary school group that visited today, Lincoln Elementary. I need you to get me contact information for one of the children who was on the tour. A girl named Emma Rodriguez." "Of course, sir. May I ask what this is regarding?" Sterling looked back at the screen displaying their successful AI system, then at his team of engineers who were finally smiling after months of frustration and exhaustion. "Jennifer, that little girl may have just saved our company." Broom. While Jennifer worked on getting Emma's contact information, Sterling found himself thinking about the extraordinary chain of events that had led to this moment. His wife's community outreach program, bringing underprivileged children to their facility. Sarah's willingness to listen to a 9-year-old's observation. The simple wisdom that saw patterns where expertise saw only complexity. "Mr. Sterling," his assistant's voice came through the intercom. "The board is ready for you in conference room A. Tell them we'll be there in 15 minutes, Sterling replied, "and prepare them for the best news Sterling Technologies has received in years." As his team made final preparations for the presentation, Sterling walked to the windows overlooking San Francisco. The city sparkled in the late afternoon sun, full of possibility and potential. Somewhere out there, in a small apartment above a corner market, a 9-year-old girl was probably doing her homework, unaware that her simple observation had just changed everything. He thought about Margaret, How proud she would be that her community outreach program had not only fulfilled its mission of inspiring young minds, but had actually saved the company they had built together. Sometimes the most profound gifts come from the most unexpected sources. The elevator chimed, signaling it was time to face the board of directors. But for the first time in 18 months, Robert Sterling walked toward that meeting with confidence, knowing that Sterling Technologies was about to announce a breakthrough that would revolutionize medical diagnostics and prove that innovation knows no boundaries of age, background, or circumstance. The Sterling Technologies boardroom had never felt so electric. 12 board members, representing billions in investment capital, sat around the polished mahogany table as Robert Sterling and his team prepared to deliver what everyone assumed would be another disappointing progress report. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the room, highlighting the tension etched on every face. Board Chairman Harrison Matthews, a 71-year-old veteran of Silicon Valley's biggest successes and failures, adjusted his reading glasses and cleared his throat. Robert, before we begin, I want to be transparent about the board's concerns. 18 months without resolution on Project Genesis has cost us significant market position. Meridian Corp's announcement last week puts additional pressure on our timeline. Sterling nodded gravely. Harrison, distinguished board members, what I'm about to tell you will sound impossible, but every word is true. He gestured to Sarah Chen, who stood beside a mobile presentation screen. 6 hours ago, we achieved full integration success on Project Genesis. The silence that followed was profound. Board member Catherine Liu, a former NASA administrator, leaned forward. I'm sorry, did you say success, as in the system is functional, not just functional? Sarah stepped forward, her voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. Operating at 112% of projected efficiency with medical diagnostic accuracy, rates 23% higher than our original specifications. The room erupted in stunned murmurs. Matthews raised his hand for silence. Explain to us how 18 months of failure became success in a matter of hours. Sterling took a deep breath. The solution came from the most unexpected source imaginable. This morning, we had a visit from Lincoln Elementary School as part of our community outreach program. One of the children, a 9-year-old girl named Emma Rodriguez, observed our error displays and identified a pattern that 129 professional engineers had missed. A child. Board member David Kim, former CTO of 3 major tech companies, looked skeptical. Robert, with all due respect, she saw what we couldn't see because we were looking in the wrong place. Sarah interrupted respectfully. We had focused our analysis on the complexity of the neural network algorithms, assuming the problem lay in sophisticated computational processes. Emma saw the error cascades as a timing pattern, a synchronization issue between processing clusters. Patricia Ramos stepped forward with detailed technical displays. The root cause was microsecond timing drift between our 17 neural network clusters. Over time, this tiny discrepancy compounded into complete system failure. Once we recalibrated the synchronization protocols, everything worked perfectly. Matthews studied the technical data on the screen. What's the timeline for full deployment? FDA approval documentation can be submitted within 2 weeks, Sterling replied. With these performance metrics, we anticipate accelerated review. First hospital installations could begin in 4 to 6 months. And our competitive position? Asked Catherine Liu. We've leapfrogged everyone, Marcus Webb answered confidently. While our competitors focused on incremental improvements, our accidental delay led us to a breakthrough that puts us years ahead in diagnostic accuracy and processing speed. The board members exchanged glances, the atmosphere in the room shifting dramatically from concern to excitement. Sterling could see the calculations running in their minds. Market share, revenue projections, stock value implications. Robert, Matthews said slowly, you mentioned this child, Emma Rodriguez. What's being done to acknowledge her contribution? Sterling smiled, the first genuine smile he'd experienced in months. I've been in contact with her grandmother. Emma lives in a challenging situation. Lost her parents at 6, being raised by her grandmother who works 2 jobs. But that little girl has an extraordinary gift for pattern recognition. What do you have in mind? Kim asked. Full scholarship to the university of her choice with a summer internship program here at Sterling Technologies. But more than that, I want to establish the Emma Rodriguez Foundation for Young Innovators, providing opportunities for children who might otherwise never get the chance to develop their potential. The board voted unanimously to approve Sterling's proposal. As the meeting concluded and members began filing out, Matthews approached Sterling privately. Robert, in 34 years on various corporate boards, I've never seen anything quite like this. A child solving a problem that stumped our best minds? Sterling looked out the conference room windows toward the city beyond. Margaret always said that wisdom doesn't discriminate by age or circumstance. She believed the most profound insights often come from those society overlooks. Your wife would be proud of today's outcome and your response to it. Sterling nodded, emotion tightening his throat. I think she orchestrated this somehow. Her community outreach program brought Emma to us. Her belief in looking beyond conventional wisdom guided us to listen to a child's perspective. As Sterling and his team returned to the 42nd floor, they found the engineering department transformed. Word had spread quickly through the building, and employees who had worked tirelessly on Project Genesis were celebrating with champagne and tears of relief and joy. But Sterling's mind was elsewhere, focused on a phone call he needed to make to a 67-year-old woman in a small apartment above a corner market. Rosa Rodriguez deserved to know that her granddaughter had just changed the world, and that their struggles were about to become a distant memory. The little girl with taped glasses and worn sneakers had given Sterling Technologies the greatest gift imaginable, not just a solution to their technical problem, but a reminder that innovation and insight can emerge from anywhere, carried by anyone brave enough to speak up and point out what others cannot see. 3 weeks after the Sterling Technologies breakthrough, Emma Rodriguez sat at her tiny desk in the corner of her grandmother's apartment, staring at an envelope that had arrived that morning. The return address read Sterling Technologies in elegant gold lettering, and inside was an invitation that would change everything. Rosa Rodriguez stood behind her granddaughter, reading over Emma's shoulder with tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. At 67, Rosa had cleaned office buildings and stocked shelves at the corner market below their apartment for as long as Emma could remember. The idea that her granddaughter might have a different future seemed too miraculous to believe. "Mija," Rosa whispered, her voice trembling, "read it to me again." Emma pushed her taped glasses up her nose and carefully read the formal letter. "Dear Emma Rodriguez, Sterling Technologies would like to invite you to participate in our Young Innovators Summer Program. This includes a full scholarship for your education, mentorship opportunities, and the chance to work alongside our engineering teams." The letter was signed by Robert Sterling himself, with a handwritten note at the bottom. "Thank you for showing us what we couldn't see. You have a gift that the world needs." But mixed with Emma's excitement was a gnawing worry that had been growing stronger each day. At Lincoln Elementary, word had spread quickly about her visit to Sterling Technologies. Some classmates looked at her with new respect, but others whispered behind her back, calling her a show-off or saying she was too weird for a 9-year-old. Her teacher, Mrs. Patterson, had been supportive but concerned. "Emma, I'm proud of what you accomplished, but I want to make sure you're not putting too much pressure on yourself. You're still a child, and it's important to enjoy being 9 years old." The truth was, Emma had always felt different. While other kids played with toys, she found herself fascinated by patterns in everything around her. The way pigeons flew in formation, how car traffic moved in waves, the rhythm of her grandmother's breathing when she slept. Her mind worked differently, and now the whole world seemed to know it. "What if I'm not smart enough?" Emma asked her grandmother, voicing the fear that had been keeping her awake at night. "What if it was just luck that I saw that pattern? What if I disappoint them? Rosa knelt beside Emma's chair, taking her granddaughter's small hands in her own work-worn ones. Mija, listen to me. Your parents, they would be so proud of you right now. Your mama, she was always saying you saw things differently, that you had a special way of understanding the world. Emma's memories of her parents were precious, but fading. She was only 6 when the accident happened, old enough to remember their love, but too young to fully understand why they had to leave. Rosa had stepped in seamlessly, working extra hours to provide for Emma, while nurturing her granddaughter's unusual gifts. I remember when you were 7, Rosa continued. You told me that the washing machine in the basement was going to break 3 days before it actually did. You heard something in the sound that nobody else noticed. You've always had this gift, Emma. That man at the big company just helped everyone else see what I've known all along. The next morning, Emma walked to school with the invitation letter carefully tucked in her backpack. She had made a decision during the night. She would accept the opportunity even though it scared her. As she entered her classroom, she noticed immediately that something felt different. Her classmates were whispering more than usual, and when she took her seat, Jennifer Martinez, who had always been friendly before, turned away without their usual morning greeting. During lunch, Emma found herself sitting alone for the first time in weeks. "Hey, Brainiac!" called out Tommy Peterson, a 5th grader who had never paid attention to Emma before. "Think you're too good for us regular kids now?" Emma felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. She had never wanted to be different, never asked for this attention. All she had done was point out something that seemed obvious to her, and now everything was changing in ways she didn't understand. But that afternoon, as Emma walked home through the neighborhood she had known her entire life, she made a quiet promise to herself. She would use whatever gift she had been given to help others, the way her parents would have wanted. She would make Rosa proud, and she would prove that being different could be a good thing. The Sterling Technologies campus hummed with unusual energy on a bright Monday morning in June, as Emma Rodriguez walked through the main entrance for her first day as the company's youngest summer intern. At 9 years old, she was accompanied by her grandmother Rosa, both of them overwhelmed by the gleaming towers and bustling activity around them. Robert Sterling himself waited in the lobby, his silver hair neatly combed and his expression warm but slightly nervous. In the 3 weeks since the board meeting, he had thought constantly about this moment, how to nurture Emma's extraordinary gift without overwhelming a child who should still be enjoying summer vacation. "Emma, Rosa, welcome to Sterling Technologies," he said, extending his hand to Rosa first, then kneeling to Emma's eye level. "Emma, are you ready for your first day as our special consultant?" Emma nodded, though her grip on her grandmother's hand tightened slightly. The lobby was filled with adults in business attire, all moving with purpose and urgency that made her feel very small and very young. Dr. Sarah Chen approached the group, carrying a tablet and wearing a genuine smile. Over the past weeks, she had become Emma's primary mentor, tasked with creating a program that would challenge Emma intellectually while respecting her age and emotional needs. "Good morning, Emma," Sarah said warmly. "I've prepared some special projects for us to work on together. Nothing too complicated, just some pattern recognition exercises that I think you'll find interesting." As they rode the elevator to the 15th floor, deliberately chosen to be away from the high-pressure environment of the main engineering departments, Emma pressed her face to the glass walls, watching the city spread out below them. Rosa squeezed her hand reassuringly. "Remember, Mija," Rosa whispered, "you belong here just as much as anyone else." The special workspace Sarah had prepared was unlike anything Emma had ever seen. Instead of the sterile corporate environment she had expected, the room felt more like an advanced playground. Interactive displays lined the walls, showing everything from weather patterns to stock market fluctuations to social media trending data. "Emma, your gift is seeing patterns that others miss," Sarah explained, as they settled into the colorful, comfortable seating area. "We'd like you to look at some different types of information and tell us what you notice. There's no right or wrong answer. We just want to understand how your mind processes complex data. The first display showed traffic patterns throughout San Francisco over the course of a week. Emma studied it for several minutes. Her head tilted slightly as she absorbed the flowing lines and color changes. "It's like a heartbeat," she said finally. "The city breathes in and out. Morning rush hour is like breathing in really fast because everyone's trying to get somewhere at once. But look here," she pointed to a specific intersection. "This spot always gets clogged around 2:30 in the afternoon, even when there's no rush hour. That's weird." Sarah pulled up additional data on that intersection and discovered that a nearby school dismissal was creating a daily bottleneck that city planners had never identified. Emma had spotted a pattern in 15 minutes that traffic engineers had missed for months. "That's incredible, Emma. What else do you see?" For the next 2 hours, Emma examined various data sets: hospital patient flow, social media engagement patterns, even the company's own employee productivity metrics. Each time, she identified subtle patterns and anomalies that seasoned analysts had overlooked. But it was during lunch that Emma's real personality began to emerge. Away from the formal testing environment, she relaxed and began asking questions that surprised the adults around her. "Mr. Sterling," she said between bites of her sandwich, "why did all those smart engineers miss the timing problem? Were they not looking at the right stuff?" Sterling considered the question carefully. "Sometimes when you know a lot about something, you start looking for complicated answers. The engineers expected the problem to be very difficult, so they looked for very difficult solutions. But sometimes the simple answer is the right answer." "Exactly. Your fresh perspective was exactly what we needed." Emma nodded thoughtfully. "My grandmother always says that when you can't find your keys, you should stop looking in complicated places and check your pocket first." 2 months into Emma's summer internship, Sterling Technologies faced an unexpected crisis that would test both the company's resolve and Emma's remarkable abilities in ways no one had anticipated. On a sweltering Tuesday morning in August, Dr. Marcus Webb burst into Robert Sterling's office with news that sent shockwaves through the entire organization. "Robert, we have a serious problem," Marcus said, his usually calm demeanor replaced by obvious distress. "Meridian Corp just announced they're launching their medical AI system next month, 6 months ahead of their original timeline." Sterling looked up from the quarterly reports he had been reviewing, his expression darkening. "How is that possible? Our intelligence suggested they were still months away from FDA approval." They've bypassed the traditional approval process by partnering with 3 major hospital chains for beta testing under emergency use protocols. They're positioning it as a response to the nationwide physician shortage." Marcus pulled up news articles on his tablet. "The market is responding aggressively. Our stock is down 12% in pre-market trading." The implications hit Sterling immediately. Despite their breakthrough with Project Genesis, Sterling Technologies still needed 2 more months for FDA approval and another month for full deployment. Meridian's head start could cost them the entire market advantage they had worked so hard to achieve. "What's the earliest we could accelerate our timeline?" Sterling asked. "Without compromising safety protocols? Still 8 weeks minimum." "But Robert, there's something else." Meridian's preliminary test results show diagnostic accuracy rates of 91%. That's impressive, but it's still significantly lower than our system's performance. Sterling was quiet for a long moment, processing the competitive landscape. Then he had an idea that was either brilliant or completely insane. "Marcus, what if we didn't try to beat them to market? What if we took a completely different approach?" Before Marcus could respond, Sterling was dialing Sarah Chen's extension. "Sarah, I need you and Emma in my office immediately. We have a situation that requires unconventional thinking." 20 minutes later, Emma sat in the familiar conference room, her grandmother Rosa beside her for moral support. The past 2 months had transformed Emma from a nervous child into a confident young consultant, though she still pushed her taped glasses up her nose when she was thinking hard. Sterling explained the competitive situation in terms Emma could understand. Emma, imagine you and another student both have science fair projects due on the same day. The other student finishes first and presents their project. How do you make sure people still pay attention to your project? Emma considered this carefully. Well, if their project is good, but mine is better, I could show people exactly why mine works better. Like if they made a volcano that bubbles a little bit, I could make one that bubbles a lot, and show people the difference. Exactly. Meridian's system is like the volcano that bubbles a little bit. Our system is much better, but how do we prove that to everyone? Emma's eyes lit up with understanding. You need to do a test where both systems look at the same thing so people can see which one is really better. Sterling smiled. That's exactly right. We want to propose a public demonstration, a head-to-head comparison between our AI system and Meridian's, using real medical cases with known outcomes. Sarah leaned forward. That's incredibly risky, Robert. If something goes wrong, if our system fails in public. Nice, but if it succeeds, Sterling continued, we prove definitively that our technology is superior. We turn Meridian's first-mover advantage into a disadvantage by showing that being first doesn't mean being best. Emma had been listening intently, and now she raised her hand like she was in school. Mr. Sterling, can I ask something? What if there's a pattern in how the other company's system makes mistakes? Like what if it's bad at certain types of problems, but good at others? The adults in the room exchanged glances. Once again, Emma had cut straight to the heart of a complex issue. That's brilliant, Emma, Marcus said. If we could identify systematic weaknesses in Meridian's diagnostic accuracy, we could design our demonstration to highlight those specific areas. Over the next week, Emma dove into the data with the focused intensity that had become her trademark. She studied Meridian's diagnostic results, comparing accuracy rates across different types of medical conditions, patient demographics, and symptom presentations. What she discovered was remarkable. Meridian's AI system showed consistent weaknesses in diagnosing complex conditions that required pattern recognition across multiple symptoms, exactly the type of analysis where Emma's own pattern recognition gifts excelled. The announcement of the Great AI Challenge sent shockwaves through the medical technology industry and captured the attention of the entire world. Sterling Technologies had publicly challenged Meridian Corp to a head-to-head diagnostic competition, with the results to be broadcast live to medical professionals globally. The stakes couldn't be higher. The winner would effectively dominate the multi-billion-dollar AI medical diagnostic market. Emma Rodriguez found herself at the center of a media storm she never could have imagined. News outlets across the country wanted to interview the 9-year-old genius who changed everything, but Rosa and Sterling had carefully shielded her from most of the attention, allowing only one major interview with a respected science journalist. I'm not really a genius, Emma had said during that interview, her honesty disarming the reporter. I just see patterns that other people don't notice, like when you're looking for your friend in a crowded place. Everyone else just sees a crowd, but you can spot your friend because you know what to look for. The challenge was scheduled for September 15th, 3 weeks away, at the prestigious Johns Hopkins Medical Center. 25 complex diagnostic cases, each representing real patients whose conditions had been definitively confirmed through extensive testing, would be presented to both AI systems simultaneously. A panel of the world's leading physicians would evaluate the accuracy and reasoning behind each diagnosis. But as the date approached, Emma began experiencing something she had never felt before: crippling self-doubt. The weight of the challenge had grown beyond anything she could have anticipated. Sterling Technologies' entire future, thousands of jobs, and potentially millions of patients' lives depended on the insights she had provided. "What if I was wrong?" Emma confided to her grandmother one evening as they sat in their small apartment. "What if I only thought I saw a pattern?" But it wasn't really there. What if Mr. Sterling's company loses because of me? Rosa set down her sewing and pulled Emma close. Mija, do you remember when you were 7 and you told me the traffic light on Harbour Street was broken? Emma nodded. She had noticed that the light was staying green too long in one direction, creating dangerous backups. The city workers didn't believe you at first. They said a little girl couldn't possibly understand traffic engineering. But you were right, weren't you? And when they fixed it, accidents at that intersection went down by 60%. But this is different, Abuela. This is so much bigger. The size doesn't matter, Emma. Your gift is your gift. Whether you're looking at a traffic light or a computer system worth hundreds of millions of dollars. The pattern is either there or it isn't, and you've never been wrong about patterns. Meanwhile, at Sterling Technologies, the pressure was building to unprecedented levels. Dr. Sarah Chen had been working 18-hour days, fine-tuning their AI system based on Emma's insights about Meridian's weaknesses. The engineering team had run thousands of simulations, each one confirming Emma's analysis of their competitors' systematic blind spots. But Robert Sterling was facing his own crisis of confidence. 3 days before the challenge, he called an emergency meeting with his senior staff. "I need to know," he said, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "Are we absolutely certain about this? Because if we're wrong, if Emma's analysis was incorrect, we don't just lose market share, we lose everything. Meridian will own the market, and Sterling Technologies becomes a cautionary tale about hubris." Dr. Marcus Webb spoke up first. "Robert, I've been in this business for 31 years. I've never seen pattern analysis as precise as Emma's. She didn't just identify Meridian's weaknesses, she predicted them with mathematical accuracy." The next afternoon, Sterling sat with Emma in the quiet workspace that had become her second home over the summer. Rosa waited outside, giving them privacy for what Sterling sensed would be one of the most important conversations of his life. "Emma, I need to ask you something very seriously," Sterling began. "When you looked at Meridian's data and saw those patterns, how certain were you? Not how certain you think I want you to be, but how certain you actually felt inside." Emma was quiet for a long time, her small fingers tracing patterns on the table as she thought. When she finally looked up, her eyes were clear and confident behind her taped glasses. "Mr. Sterling, the pattern was as clear to me as my grandmother's face. When I see a real pattern, it's not like guessing or hoping, it's like seeing something that's actually there." The auditorium at Johns Hopkins Medical Center buzzed with anticipation as medical professionals, technology leaders, and journalists from around the world gathered for what the media had dubbed the Battle of the AI Titans. Emma Rodriguez sat in the front row between her grandmother Rosa and Robert Sterling, her small hands folded tightly in her lap as she tried to process the magnitude of the moment. On the massive stage, 2 identical workstations had been set up, each housing the most advanced AI diagnostic systems ever created. To the left, Meridian Corp's sleek black terminal represented 18 months of development and millions in investment. To the right, Sterling Technologies' system, refined through Emma's insights, gleamed under the bright stage lights. Dr. Patricia Hamilton, Chief of Medicine at Johns Hopkins and the challenge moderator, stepped to the podium. "Ladies and gentlemen, what we witness today will fundamentally change how we approach medical diagnosis. 2 artificial intelligence systems, each claiming superiority, will analyze 25 complex cases that have challenged human physicians for decades." Emma felt her heart racing as the first case appeared on the overhead screens. A 43-year-old woman with symptoms that seemed unrelated: joint pain, vision problems, and unusual skin discoloration. Human doctors had taken weeks to reach the correct diagnosis of a rare autoimmune condition. Both AI systems began processing immediately, their analyses appearing in real time on split screens for the audience. Meridian's system quickly identified several possible conditions, but seemed to struggle with integrating the disparate symptoms. Sterling's system, guided by the pattern recognition principles Emma had helped refine, methodically connected the subtle relationships between symptoms. Meridian system diagnosis. Lupus, probability 71%, Dr. Hamilton announced. Sterling system diagnosis. Systemic sclerosis with ocular involvement, probability 94%. The correct diagnosis appeared on screen. Systemic sclerosis with ocular involvement. Sterling's system had nailed it perfectly, while Meridian's had missed the mark. One case down, 24 to go. As the challenge progressed, the pattern Emma had identified became increasingly clear to everyone in the auditorium. Meridian's AI excelled at diagnosing common conditions with obvious symptoms, but struggled when cases required connecting subtle, seemingly unrelated clues. Sterling's system, enhanced by Emma's insights about pattern recognition, consistently identified the complex relationships that led to accurate diagnoses. By the 15th case, murmurs of amazement rippled through the audience. Sterling Technologies' system had achieved perfect accuracy on every complex multi-symptom case, while Meridian's success rate had dropped to 68% on the most challenging diagnoses. Emma watched with growing confidence as her analysis proved correct again and again. She found herself quietly predicting which cases would give Meridian trouble, and her predictions were proving remarkably accurate. During a brief intermission, Dr. Jennifer Park, Meridian's Chief Technology Officer, approached the Sterling Technologies section. Her expression was professional but clearly strained. "Mr. Sterling," she said, extending her hand, "I have to ask, how did you identify our system's weaknesses so precisely? Our internal testing never revealed these blind spots." Sterling glanced at Emma, who nodded encouragingly. "Dr. Park, I'd like you to meet Emma Rodriguez, our youngest consultant. She identified the patterns in your diagnostic data that indicated systematic weaknesses in complex symptom integration." Dr. Park looked down at Emma with undisguised amazement. "You're the child who identified the original timing synchronization issue?" "Yes, ma'am," Emma replied politely. "Your computer is really good at finding big problems, but when it has to put lots of little clues together, it gets confused. It's like trying to solve a jigsaw puzzle by looking at each piece separately instead of seeing how they fit together." The simplicity and accuracy of Emma's explanation left Dr. Park speechless. Here was a 9-year-old girl who had dissected their multi-million-dollar system's fundamental flaw with childlike clarity. When Dr. Hamilton announced the final results, the auditorium erupted in sustained applause. Sterling Technologies had achieved something unprecedented, a perfect diagnostic accuracy rate of 100% compared to Meridian's 72% overall performance. 6 months after the great AI challenge, Emma Rodriguez stood in the same Sterling Technologies conference room where her journey had begun, but everything had changed. The walls now displayed framed articles from medical journals documenting how their AI system had already helped diagnose over 50,000 patients with unprecedented accuracy. The scared 9-year-old who had once pressed her nose against glass partitions had grown into a confident young consultant whose insights were sought by medical professionals worldwide. Sterling Technologies had become the undisputed leader in AI medical diagnostics, with their system deployed in over 300 hospitals across North America. The company's stock price had tripled, and Robert Sterling had been featured on the cover of Time magazine as the CEO who listened to a child and changed everything. But the most remarkable transformation had occurred in Emma herself. Now 10 years old and in 5th grade at the prestigious Academy for Gifted Sciences, her tuition fully covered by the Emma Rodriguez Foundation, she balanced her advanced studies with her role as Sterling Technologies' youngest special advisor. "Emma," Sarah Chen said as they reviewed the latest diagnostic data, "your pattern recognition algorithm has identified another potential improvement in our cardiac assessment protocols. The system is now catching early-stage heart conditions that human doctors miss 93% of the time." Emma nodded, studying the flowing data streams that had once seemed so mysterious but now felt as familiar as her grandmother's heartbeat. The pattern shows up about 6 weeks before symptoms become obvious. It's like the heart is trying to whisper that something's wrong, but people don't know how to listen. Rosa Rodriguez, now 58 and able to retire comfortably thanks to the foundation Sterling had established in Emma's honor, watched her granddaughter with pride and amazement. The scared little girl who had lost her parents was growing into a young woman whose gifts were helping save lives around the world. "Mija," Rosa said during their evening walk through their new neighborhood. They had moved to a beautiful home near Emma's school while keeping the apartment above the corner market for sentimental reasons. "Do you ever miss the quiet life we used to have?" Emma considered the question seriously. Her days were now filled with consulting calls, research projects, and media interviews carefully managed to protect her childhood while allowing her to share her insights. She had become somewhat famous, but Sterling and Rosa worked hard to ensure she remained grounded and normal. "Sometimes," Emma admitted, "but then I think about all the people who are getting better because the computers can help doctors see what's wrong with them. Remember Mrs. Chen from the market? She told us last week that the new AI system at her hospital caught her cancer really early, and now she's going to be okay." That evening, Sterling called Emma with news that would mark the beginning of her next chapter. "Emma, I've been contacted by researchers at Stanford, MIT, and Harvard. They want to study how your pattern recognition abilities work, not to exploit them, but to understand how we might identify and nurture similar gifts in other children." "You mean there might be other kids like me?" "Possibly. Your success has made people realize that extraordinary insights can come from unexpected places. We want to create programs to find children with similar abilities and give them opportunities to develop their gifts." The following month, Emma was invited to speak at the National Conference on Medical Innovation. Standing before an audience of 2,000 medical professionals, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. "When I first saw those red numbers on the computer screen," she began, her voice now confident and clear, "I didn't know I was looking at something that had stumped really smart people for a long time. I just saw a pattern that seemed obvious to me. I think maybe that's the point. Sometimes being obvious is exactly what the world needs." She paused, looking out at the sea of faces hanging on her every word. "I want other kids to know that being different isn't something to be scared of. If you see patterns that other people don't see, or if you understand things in ways that seem weird to grown-ups, maybe that's exactly what the world needs from you." But the thunderous applause that followed carried a message of hope, that the next breakthrough, the next revolutionary insight, might come from a child who sees clearly what experts cannot perceive. Emma Rodriguez had proven that sometimes the most complex problems in the world are just waiting for someone to see them with fresh, uncomplicated eyes, and that someone might be anyone, anywhere, of any age, with the courage to speak up and say, "I see the pattern you're missing.